right, once again, we've got Ryan from the Blade Job Show again to help us out with some couple of wrestlers who featured in this Nova Pro event that we know that he knows more about than we do. So rather than scour the internet, we'll talk to the main man himself. Ryan, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm surviving. That's all we can ever do these days.
I would agree. I never thought that we would be on our third Nova Pro review in 2 months. I thought these were going to be spaced out over 6 months, but as we're not being able to get out to indie events right now, it's been a saving that we didn't go to them from day one, and we still have at least another 10 that we haven't seen yet, so that's good. All right, before we get started, I do want to talk to you about something. As we talked about Matt Tremont before, and as there was some breaking news this week relating to CZW, wondered what your opinions were on that. There's been some, I saw Laney Luck tweeted about it. I saw Jordan Grace certainly tweeted about it. What's your take on CZW?
So, this is hard. I mean, this is a really unfortunate situation that a lot of these performers find themselves in. First and foremost, I do not agree with what CZW is doing. Regardless of if it's their decision or someone else's, you know, I know their response was, well, we licensed the footage and they can do it whatever they want with it. You should know who you're licensing to before making that decision.
Now, I don't know the whole story for this, and I've kind of picked it up just from reading tweets. So my understanding of it is, and you can correct me straight away because I'm bound to be wrong on this, is that basically things that they've already filmed, another company has bought the rights and they can do with them whatever they like, and the wrestlers do not get a cut of this at all. Is that about right?
From what I understand, yes. Now, this is their response to what is happening. It's hard to know if this is even true or not. I don't know enough about licensing agreements. Like, I know how it works in the music industry. Obviously, we've all been to, you know, whether it be Best Buys or I may be dating myself with Strawberries or whomever, and we're looking through our favorite artists' albums, and there's 18 different best of albums. And why do they release so many of these? Obviously, if they were under one record company for 3 albums, that record company can still release those 3 albums in any way they see fit. So they release best of albums so they can continue to capitalize on the success of the band. I assume with video it's the same way. I don't know. And this is a very odd place to be because this is not a big name promotion with national exposure. You know, this isn't TNA, this isn't Ring of Honor, this isn't MLW. They don't have a TV deal. So I don't know what kind of agreements they have when it comes to where they license their footage and why. Because CCW has their own streaming service called CCW Studio. But they're also featured on both Power Slam and Independent Wrestling TV. So I don't really know what they might just license to everyone, just hoping somewhere sticks.
See, I don't know exactly how it works either, and I was a little confused. I could see why wrestlers would be upset if someone's making a profit from repackaging in any form that they want. I could kind of understand that. But also at the same time, when something's being recorded, if IWTV comes along and says, hey, we want to put your show on, then you'd assume that they would be allowed to do that as well. Like, I don't know what contracts are actually signed in regards to things like that.
The issue at hand is the performers gave CZW the rights to market them as professional wrestlers on this show. CZW owns the show. Say it was Tournament of Death.
Sure.
And the wrestlers that performed on that have agreed to appear on that show. It's just like the same reason that WWE, they can make a CM Punk documentary, they can make a CM Punk compilation all they want. Even though CM Punk doesn't work there anymore, they don't own the rights to CM Punk's name. They own everything he did for WWE. Now, in the case of if CZW licensed it to a company who was releasing those pay-per-views as they were, that's one thing. There's no breach of contract here. But marketing them as, I believe, as Lufisto put it, as softcore porn.
Yeah.
That's a bit, that's the gray area. That's the, is this legally allowed? Because it's being marketed as something almost completely different. You know, when I saw those pay-per-views that they were releasing over the next couple of months, that reminded me to the way back in the day when there were, you know, VHS tapes of like backyard wrestling and things like that, because I owned most of those backyard wrestling VHS tapes. And I'll be 100% honest, there's a good 10 minutes of pretty much softcore porn included with them. Are you familiar with Major Guns? She was in WCW.
I'm not. Well, if WCW was available in England, I certainly didn't watch it at that time. If it was on Sky, and I didn't get Sky.
So she was there in the later portions of WCW. She was a valet for Hugh Morris was in the faction, but at that point he was known as Hugh G. Rection because they had given up at that point. But anyways, she was just you know, pretty blonde Barbie girl. Like, that's all she was.
Okay.
She wasn't really a wrestler. And in these VHSs of backyard wrestling, even though she wasn't a backyard wrestler, she shows up topless through half of the video.
Okay, all right. No, I'm certainly not familiar with those videos.
When I see what CCW is doing.
Okay, well that would explain why then several people were unhappy, and also why several people had already contacted lawyers. Now, let's move on then to the main reason actually I wanted you on, and it kind of links in actually with this. David Starr appeared at this event. It was the 1 year anniversary, and he had his match against Arik Royal, who was undefeated at this point, and actually, as this is going to come at the end, remained undefeated for the first year. Now, I actually tried contacting, I know David Starr. I know you've talked about him before on Beyond. I don't know him as well. I know him more through the We the Indie podcast, and I tried looking up some stuff on there. I actually contacted him. I was like, hey, is there like an information sheet you guys have got? We're going to be featuring David Starr in like a month's time. We just want to give out some information about what your organization is. Never got a response from them. So I was like, okay, all right, fair enough. My understanding is, and you can jump in as well on this, they help people, basically, as there's not as many rights as wrestlers, they don't sign contracts, not everything's the same. They're trying to get them, I guess, unionized kind of a little bit. I know they've tried to help with, and I didn't know some of the behind-the-scenes stuff at all, like not even guaranteed a bottle of water if you're at a wrestling match, not guaranteed food, not guaranteed sort of basic services at all. So I know they're trying to help with things like that. I guess that would be a good starting point. What do we know about that side of David Starr? Perhaps the political side, I guess.
To be honest, what I know is what I see on Twitter and what I see in interviews, and the public face that is David Starr in the fight for you. I get it, and I agree with it for the most part. From what I can tell, that's pretty much what you said is pretty much what he's trying to do. Is he's trying to get there to be a union for professional wrestlers, so they are guaranteed basic amenities no matter where they are. A lot of it does stem. I feel like he takes a lot of shots at WWE, and where I agree with him for the most part, I don't always agree with that, mainly for the fact that, yes, WWE does not offer health insurance to its performers. However, anything that does happen in a WWE ring or at a WWE event is covered. They have on-site medical teams. If someone blows out their knee, WWE has doctors that take care of them. They have doctors who perform the surgeries for them. They don't, all of a sudden, they're not just out of pocket, oh, I'm screwed.
Okay.
Also, and this sounds, I don't know how this sounds, because I still can't really make a decision on my own personal feelings on it, but most, at least main roster people in WWE, are making six figures.
Yes.
they can afford private insurance. This is not like they're making $13 an hour and they can't afford private insurance. Like Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler has been stuck in the mid-card for, 10 years?
Long time.
He's had a world championship run, but he's a mid-carder, and his last contract was for what? A 5-year, $5 million? That's $1 million a year. I think Dolph Ziggler can afford to get himself some health insurance.
I would agree with you. I think the lowest salary I saw, because I remember looking one time, was like 70,000. I think Ruby Riot, I think all the Riot Squad were getting around that figure. But yeah, my understanding, I don't think that's really what I think David Starr is more looking after the people that aren't getting those types of figures, though.
I do too, and once again, I agree and I disagree, because you have to look at the promoters' side of it too. Most promoters are just scraping by.
Yeah.
You get guys like, I think when Cody was back on the indies after he left WWE, I think it was something like his booking fee was like $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you wanted him and Brandy, it was something like $1,800. And that's just for them pretty much to show up and wrestle. And obviously they're going to need, someone like Cody. He's not going to, jump in his 98 Volkswagen Jetta and drive on up to Worcester to wrestle. No, he's going to want you to fly him out there, and he's going to want you to put him up in a hotel room. And that's the way it works. That's the way the business works. So take all of those, all of a sudden the 18-year-old kid who just started training, should be getting flown out and put up in a hotel room, because that's the unfortunate side of unionization is everyone gets the same thing. If they say, yes, this is how much, an independent professional wrestler, this is the guarantee that they get from any booking, that's going to put a lot of indie organizations out of business immediately.
I think this is really difficult in the US because of the medical system that you have here. I think David Starr is actually based in the UK. I know from the podcast, Sugar Dunkerton certainly talked about that when I think he's based in the UK as well, predominantly. And, of course, that's totally different. It's free healthcare. The NHS, National Health Service, all that's provided. So I think they're also looking at other things as well. But, yeah, over here, that's really difficult to be able to pay that. The fees are ridiculous as far as a Brit who's come from a system where I didn't have to pay anything to suddenly having to pay my, $50 a month. And, and that doesn't give you anything, essentially. You still, every time you go to the doctor, you still got your co-pays, you've still got bills on top of that as well. So, yeah, it is very difficult. It is a difficult issue, that's for sure.
And I obviously would love for everyone, professional wrestlers, or, to have all of these things provided to them. I think that's fantastic. I mean, especially in a business like that where, you're getting paid $25 to, develop CTE, essentially. You're getting $25 to almost kill yourself.
Yeah.
And hope that you did well enough in the ring where a bunch of people at that show want to buy your t-shirt. You gotta hope that you made money, because there's no guarantee you're going to make money at any booking. And from that standpoint, I agree. There has to be something to protect these people, but unfortunately, it's, especially as you said, in England or in other countries that have a national healthcare system, this is a lot easier here. You broke your arm during a wrestling match, go to the doctor, they'll take care of you. I love, obviously you live here in the States, you know the arguments. Oh, well, in England and Canada, they have to wait for months and months and months. If you got a broken arm, you don't have to wait for months. It's if you have something that's non-life-threatening that you might have to wait a little bit, because there's other people who have also non-life-threatening things that they're already in line. And that's fine.
Yeah,
you know?
we have the advantage that we have both.
If you have a heart attack in Toronto, they're not going to tell you to wait. They're going to say, "Oh, this guy's having a heart attack. We got to take care of him."
Yeah, it's very strange. We're going to say we have the option of having private healthcare as well. So if you have those things that you decide you want doing a little quicker, sure, you can go ahead and pay and you can jump to the front of the queue. But yeah, from a personal experience, I've never had to wait for anything. No one from my family has ever had to wait for anything either. But obviously you get slightly different stories depending on where you live as well, but also from the news organization you hear that from. All right, let's get to the wrestling side of this. Like I said, I do not know David Starr very well, which was why straight away my first thought was you. I know I saw him at one of the American Rana events. I do not remember which. What can you tell us about the wrestling career of David Starr? I looked quickly on Cage Match. I saw a ton of titles, so I was like, woof, I didn't realize that he was quite as well traveled as that either.
So I think, strictly from a wrestling standpoint, I think that David Starr might be one of the most talented guys out there, because he can do everything. I've seen him in very technical matches. I've seen him in death matches. I mean, the guy can do just about anything, and he can do everything well. He's not one of those guys that does everything, but he's kind of mediocre at everything. He hits the ring, and from the minute he hits the ring, there's just something about him, whether he's a heel or whether he's a face, he captivates the audience. And I think, in ring is very important, but your presence and your persona is also equally as important in what at the end of the day boils down to a performance art. The first time I remember seeing David Starr I remember the show. The show was XWA Crossroads, called Crossroads because it was right after Cody had come back to the Indies, and he was the main event. He wrestled Tommaso Ciampa at Ciampa's last independent event before he officially signed full-time with NXT, so that was great. But nice. David Starr was there, and I didn't really know who he was. Like, the name sounded familiar, but I didn't really know who he was. And I don't even remember who he wrestled, because I saw him. I want to say he actually wrestled Mike Bennett, but I could be wrong. But I was just captivated by him. He wasn't a dastardly heel. He was a pretentious heel. He spent half of the match sitting on the apron, refusing to wrestle, and just complaining. And at first I was like, this is boring. What is this? And within a couple minutes, I just went, this guy's really, really good at what he does, because I hated him.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I'm supposed to hate him. And I'm not the kind of person who, heel, face, it doesn't matter to me. If I like you as a wrestler, I like you as a wrestler. I'll boo you just because I'm supposed to boo you, because that's part of the entertainment is, I do hate when everyone just cheers the heel. It doesn't work. It's stupid. Even if you like them, boo them anyways, because that's what you're supposed to do. And I realized that this guy made me hate him without ever, I don't know, it was just weird. And I grew to like him immediately. And then when I started going to Beyond shows, he was just starting his feud with Joey Janela, which lasted for 2 years. Once again, he's a guy where if he wants to have a on-the-mat technical wrestling match, no problem. He could go toe-to-toe with Jonathan Gresham and Zack Sabre Jr. any day of the week. You want to see him, you want to take down the ropes, string up some barbed wire, he'll do it. and he'll do it well, and he'll do it believably. And I think he's very, very versatile as a performer. And the first episode of Uncharted Territory for Beyond, he wrestled ECW legend Masato Tanaka. And I'm thinking, Tanaka's getting kind of old. He's kind of beat up. I'm not expecting much out of this match. They both brought the best out of each other. I mean, it was a hard-hitting, technical, just awesome match. And I think that's what David Starr does. I think David Starr gets in the ring, and he's very much like Kevin Owens, where it doesn't matter who's in the ring with him. He will put on a good match. I always point towards when Kevin Owens debuted main roster. John Cena was at the lowest of the low in the fans' eyes. And Kevin Owens and John Cena put on 5-star matches for months. And every match was different. And that's what I see when I see David Starr. David Starr and Joey Janela put on clinics of matches every time they got in the ring. And this is David Starr, the, just wrestling god that he is. And really what comes down to a slightly out of shape drunk guy. And they put on the best feud I've ever seen in professional wrestling. I understand why David Starr isn't signing with anyone, because he doesn't have to. Because he can go to the indies and he can make WWE money just by wrestling on the indies, because he's that damn good. I don't know. On the personal side of things, the guy doesn't necessarily... He kind of shoots himself in the foot sometimes. I feel like he says some things that aren't necessarily beneficial to his cause. But, what he is doing is good. And I hope he's bringing more insight and more light to the plight of professional wrestlers, especially on the independent scale. I just think he could go about it in a better way.
That match that you talked about, I remember, and like I said, I've not seen many matches. I might have probably only seen 3-4 matches. I remember that match, the one with Joey Janela, and it was like, whoa. And that was why this kind of stood out to me. I was like, oh, David Starr's on the card again. This is a big name. But the impression he made just from that one match. I know I've seen him I don't know if I've seen him live. I know he was at a Nova Pro event that was around Christmas time, so we had to watch that one on IWTV. So I don't remember that one as well. I tend not to remember the ones when I'm not there in person as well. And then when I saw this match against Arik Royal, I was like, that's a big matchup for Nova Pro on their 1-year anniversary. And the thing that stood out for me more than anything was the appreciation that Arik Royal showed to him at the end of the match. He made a big deal of going in, and of course David Starr raises his hand, points at him, and he points straight back at him, and he's like, nah, this guy made this match right here. And I think that's the thing that's impressive, the fact that I think Arik Royal is a much bigger wrestler in terms of size, and the fact that he could wrestle the bigger guy and still put on a show. And like you said, he has many facets to his wrestling ability, and I think that was probably what impressed me the most, having seen him in this match for this review.
Yeah, and I feel like David Starr, as much as he usually goes over in his matches, it seems to me that he always likes to make sure, whether he's the heel or the face, that his opponent gets recognition as well. The end of him and Janela's feud, the 60-minute no DQ Iron Man match at American Rana last year, ended with Janela cutting a promo about finally earning David Starr's respect and all this stuff. And then David Starr cuts the first We the Independent promo, where it, he calls out Vince McMahon, he calls out everyone, and then at the end, after 2 years of beating the hell out of each other, him and Janela hug, and they walk out of the arena holding hands. And it was like this huge moment, because as someone who had seen most of this live, it was like, this is it. This is the end of this feud. It's like watching the last movie in a long-running film franchise, or reading the last novel in a long-running, series. And David Starr not make himself the center of attention. Joey Janela did not make himself the center of attention, and Janela was on his way into AEW at the time. Everyone knew that this was kind of the end for Janela, at least on the indies. The fact that both men kind of held each other up and said, this guy is awesome. And that is one thing that I always think David Starr does a good job of holding other wrestlers high and putting them on a pedestal and going, look at them. But he then does the exact opposite, and like his little Twitter beef with Seth Rollins. It has nothing to do with Seth Rollins. It only has to do where Seth Rollins works. That's it. And Seth Rollins is just, he's a guy who clearly loves professional wrestling. And if he got fired tomorrow from WWE, he wouldn't give up. He'd be at AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor within a month. Because that's what he does. He likes wrestling.
Yeah.
So, once again, it's like David Starr is kind of like, sometimes I'm like, man, I agree with you 100%, but other times I don't agree with him at all, and it's really, it's a weird situation with him.
The thing that impresses me most about what you just said there is often the complaint with WWE is that they can't do the long storytelling. They can't go more than like one pay-per-view. They can't keep it. You just said that those guys kept that going for 2 years, and the fact that you still loved watching that the whole time, and the fact that at the end there was an actual payoff as well, I think that's some incredible storytelling, and obviously that goes partly down to those two wrestlers and the abilities that they have. All right, Ryan, I said we were not going to go as long as we did last time. Tell everybody where we can find you on social media. I did manage to find you on Twitch for a little bit. Unfortunately, it totally messed up my phone. So tell everybody where they can find you.
They can find me on Mixer.
Oh, Mixer.
Not on Twitch. See, all right, come on.
Close.
It's all right.
Yeah, I knew it. I was close.
You were close. We'll let this one slide. You can find me on Mixer, where we do all the game streaming, at mixer.com/NishGuy, and you can find me on Twitter at NishGuy, where I talk about a lot of wrestling and nonsense and gaming and just general watch everyone burn each other down because nobody can be nice to each other.
That's pretty much it. All right. Thank you so much, Ryan.